Hello hearties, it's Catherine here, and today I want to talk to you about something I hear actually really quite commonly from people who are looking for help with their sales or their sales process. And that's that they say things to me like, I can't convince people to buy from me, or I can't persuade people to pay for my service. And I wanted to sort of address that today because actually it's this very feeling of wanting to convince or persuade that's quite likely causing the problem in the first place. You see, it's actually really quite hard to persuade or convince somebody to do something unless on some level they already know they want to do it. And this is why in my programs I talk about getting the internal yes. Because unless you can get that internal yes with somebody, to have them sort of internally within themselves having that feeling of, oh my gosh, yes, this sounds like exactly what I need. I feel like I'd like to find out more, or I wonder what it's going to cost. Almost like an energetic pull forward towards you, towards the service. If that internal yes isn't there, it's actually really very hard to convince or persuade somebody to do something. Part of this is because nobody wants to be told what to do. I'm sure you can relate to this. And even the most pliable and the most easily influenced people still want to feel that they are in control of their own destiny and that they are free to make their own decisions. None of us like to feel that we're being pushed into something or that somebody outside of us is making the decision for us. So when you go about trying to persuade or trying to convince, very often what happens is that you create the opposite effect, which is that you get the potential client's resistance up, they actually become defensive, and energetically, instead of coming towards you like they will with the internal yes, they're actually going to start pushing back, pushing away from you. Even if working with you is in their absolute best interest, if you're the one telling them that can often be a real turn off for them. And so what you want to be doing instead is, instead of trying to push people, it's actually trying to lead them gently in the direction of them being able to make their own decision. The other advantage, of course, is that when the potential client makes their own decision, rather than perhaps being manipulated or cajoled or pushed or saying yes because they feel awkward not to, you find that their commitment is much stronger. And we all want clients who are completely committed to the process and are not going to contact us the next day and say, actually, I've slept on it and I've changed my mind. So first thing I would say is, within your sales process, as much as possible, try and avoid telling people what to do or telling people what's good for them, because this is what can cause that defense mechanism to come up for people. And like I said, it's so much stronger if the potential client comes to that decision about going ahead on their own. And I had a client recently who was emailing so she'd had sales conversations with a number of people who for one reason or another had decided not to go ahead, and had an online program at a lower level of investment, and she emailed some of the people who she'd spoken to previously to see whether they'd be interested in joining her for the program. And before it went out, I checked the email for her, and in the email it said something like, I believe that this is going to be the perfect solution for you. Now, the problem was, at this stage of the sales process, for her to say that in quite such definite language sounded a little bit like she was telling people what to think and telling people what to decide. Now, there is a place later on in the sales process for more definite language, and I'll talk about that very briefly towards the end of this video. The other thing you want to avoid doing is falling into the trap of talking more and more. This is another thing, you talk more and more. And the more you have a sense that this isn't landing and that the person's eyes are not lighting up and that they're not leaning in towards you, the more you talk. Maybe the louder you talk, maybe the faster you talk. And what happens is, the more you keep talking and the more change in tone or speed that there is, the more that that can actually feel to the client like a sort of either a desperation or a pushiness or an attachment to the outcome. And so, what you want to be doing, like I said, is having the client, rather than it being your job to convince or persuade, your job is to help the potential client come to a decision on their own that they want to go to the next stage with you, whatever that next stage is. And so, here's what you need to be doing. First of all, it's important that you present what you have to offer in terms of its benefits to the potential client, and also in terms of how it solves the specific problem that they might have. And if you can communicate clearly enough how the thing you have to offer can be a direct answer to a problem that your potential client has, then that's going to draw them towards you. They're naturally going to be inclined to want to find out more without you needing to push. The second thing I'd recommend you do is to use what I call possibility language rather than definite language, particularly in the earlier phases of a sales conversation or in any situation where you want to explore how the client is feeling, but without risk of coming across as a bit too pushy or a bit overbearing. And this possibility language is words like maybe, might, could you. So this would be something like, what do you think about that? Do you think this could be a great solution to the problem you've got? Or it might be something like, do you think you might be interested in finding out more? Or is this something you might be interested in doing? It's about using this possibility language, because when you use phrases like might you, could you be, do you think this could be a good solution? That sort of language, you're not telling them this is going to be a great solution for you, which is where the defensiveness can come up. Can you see? And it's allowing the client to check in with themselves and think, could it? Yeah, could it be? Might it be? Yes, actually, I think it could be. And finally, I'd encourage you to allow space. Space in your sales process. Very often, less is more. So allow silence. Allow processing time. I'm talking about allowing your client to come to their own decision and their own conclusion about working with you, because they're so much more likely to come to a yes decision if they're able to come to that decision on their own. They're also going to be more committed to the process and less likely to change their mind. And of course, if they're going to come to that decision, they're going to need to process the information that you've just shared with them. So rather than you keeping on talking, it's important that you allow them space to process, because if they don't have the space, they're not going to come to that decision on their own. Now, like I said at the beginning, there is sometimes a place in a sales conversation for much more definite language. If this is the case, it will always be actually within the formal sales conversation when both you and the client know that you're in a sales process, and it will be in step 6 of the sales conversation. So after you've really taken the trouble to explore what's going on for the client, to really listen to them at the point when they feel that you've heard them and you've understood them. When you've taken the trouble to understand the client and they really feel heard, they are often more open to hearing the more definite language. And you'll be able to sense this on a case-by-case basis, but there may well be times in that step 6 of the formal sales conversation when both of you know the agenda and both of you know why you're there, for you to say, based on what you've just shared with me, I really believe that working with me in this way, in this program, is going to be the best solution for you. But can you see there's a very big difference between saying that and saying, do you think this is something you might be interested in? Because unless you've really clearly got the internal yes, the former could feel sort of too much too soon. So there's a place for both, but just be conscious of that and use this possibility language, particularly in the earlier stages of the sales conversation where there's a greater risk of the client feeling pushed away because you're telling them what's good for them or you're telling them what you think you should do. So I hope you found that useful. I'd love to know what you think. Do go ahead and share in the comments below. And also, if you'd like to go into more detail on this particular topic, then once a week in the free Facebook group, I'm running free open live Q&A sessions on the topic of that week's blog, so you can come and find us at Selling from the Heart community. If you're not already a member of that community, we would love to see you there, so hop over there now and click to join, and I shall see you soon with the next video. Lots of love to you. Bye bye.